running a company is incredibly complex, right?
Absolutely.
And it gets, well, even more tricky when the people who actually own the business aren't the ones calling the shots day to day.
Mm-hmm.
How do you even begin to make sure that the folks in charge are, acting in the owner's best interests, let alone responsibly towards everyone else?
That tension you just mentioned, that's really the heart of what we're diving into today. We've got this material you shared, all these sources.
Right.
And our mission really is to unpack the core ideas around corporate governance, especially this idea you flagged about it, working from the inside out.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack that. So this challenge, owners versus managers, the sources hint it goes way back, centuries even. Is this the agency problem people talk about?
Precisely, yes. That separation between ownership to the principals, so the shareholders, and control, which is the agents, like directors, managers.
Okay.
That split inherently creates a potential conflict of interest. The agent running things daily might just have different priorities or incentives than the principal, the owner.
And why should you listening care about what sounds like a bit of an academic business issue?
Because how well this agency thing is managed or how badly it goes wrong has massive real-world impacts. Huge.
Like what?
Well, it affects company stability, for one, trust in financial markets, the quality, even safety of products and services.
Right, yeah.
And at the end of the day, a company's overall effect on society, on all its stakeholders, it touches everything.
Okay, that definitely puts it into perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So the source material gets right into this.
Yeah.
Looking at how good corporate governance tries to, bridge that gap.
Mm-hmm.
It mentions governance being shaped by outside forces, laws, regulations.
Yeah, the external stuff.
But also, crucially, by what happens inside the company, the internal forces.
That's it, exactly. Look, directors, managers, they can't really control the external legal landscape, can they?
No, not directly.
But they absolutely control the internal environment, what goes on within the organization. And this material really hammers home the point that the internal part, that's often where the real difference lies.
So it's about getting those governance ideas embedded deep inside, fostering a culture that looks out for all the stakeholders, not just the owners.
Yes.
And building this sense of responsibility that's, I guess, bigger than just profit.
Precisely. The source traces this need for governance right back to when ownership got separated from control. Think about the rise of the limited company.
Okay.
Great for raising money, spreading risk around, but boom, it created this accountability gap. Adam Smith actually flagged this way back in 1776.
Adam Smith.
Really?
What did he have to say about it?
He was pretty direct, actually. He basically observed that when directors are managing, and I quote loosely here, other people's money rather than their own, you can't really expect the same anxious vigilance, as he put it. He figured negligence and profusion, so wastefulness, must always prevail, more or less.
Wow. Even Adam Smith saw that potential pitfall. That early insight really underscores why governance systems became so necessary, doesn't it? To try and protect those owners who weren't actually running the business.
Absolutely. Intervention was needed pretty much from the get-go. Yeah. And that's where the external framework, the rules and regs, started taking shape.
Like company law.
Exactly. Legal requirements through things like Companies Acts. Laws dictating how companies are set up, what they have to disclose, how they manage capital, protecting creditors, and importantly, requiring an independent external audit of their books.
The independent audit. That's a big piece of the external puzzle, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's meant to give assurance that the numbers are true and fair.
Totally. The whole idea is that stakeholders, investors, creditors, everyone should be able to trust the information the company puts out. And actually, a lot of the early focus in governance codes was making sure that auditor was genuinely independent and effective.
Right. And the source describes governance itself as drawing on these two sort of streams, external and internal. External is the formal stuff. Company law, stock exchange rules, accounting standards.
The rule book.
Exactly. And the internal is how the company actually puts that into practice, how it lives up to it, how it weaves it into its own culture and values.
And this is where it gets really, really interesting. The source argues quite strongly that those external rules and codes, it doesn't matter much if they're rules-based like in the US where you must comply, or principles-based like the UK model, the comply or explain approach.
Yeah, more flexible.
Neither type on its own is enough.
So just having the rule book doesn't cut it.
Not according to this material, no. You need what it calls a climate of compliance, sure, but that climate has to be underpinned by something deeper, by the actual culture and values inside the organization.
That whole rules versus principles debate is interesting, though. Rules seem clear-cut, maybe less reliant on trust, sort of one-size-fits-all.
Perhaps, but potentially rigid.
Whereas principles offer flexibility, but they demand a lot of honesty from the board if they decide not to comply with a specific principle and have to explain why.
Exactly. But here's the kicker. Even with increasingly complex external frameworks, that core agency problem, it hasn't gone away.
Still persists.
Yeah. The source points to continued corporate blowups, even huge ones like Enron, WorldCom.
Oh yeah, I remember those.
And ongoing issues with director conduct as proof that external structures alone just aren't foolproof. They're not a complete safeguard.
Those massive failures really drove home the point that even the shareholders' narrow interests weren't always protected. Never mind the wider group, employees, customers, the public.
Precisely. And that reality spurred a lot of evolution in governance codes, particularly the source notes in the UK, starting with the Cadbury Code back in '92.
Cadbury, right. What was key there?
Well, that code really emphasized internal controls, accountability.
Yeah.
It highlighted the crucial role of independent non-executive directors, NEDs.
The independent voices on the board.
Yeah. And it recommended setting up specific committees, like audit committees, staffed by these independent directors.
And then other concerns started bubbling up, didn't they? Like huge executive pay packets, the whole fat cat scandals thing.
Oh, absolutely. That led to more reports like Greenbury and Hempel, specifically tackling remuneration, executive pay.
Right.
All these different recommendations eventually got rolled together into the combined code, which is now the UK Corporate Governance Code. And later updates kept adding layers. Things like requiring annual re-election for chairman, pushing for more diversity on boards, independent performance reviews for the board itself,
right,
and trying to link executive pay more clearly to long-term performance, and importantly, broader measures beyond just profit.
They also started asking companies to disclose more about their actual business model, didn't they? And how they manage risk, sort of linking into that integrated reporting idea.
Exactly. All these external changes provided a better structure, a stronger framework, no doubt. But the source keeps circling back to its main point. That for governance to be truly effective, especially in protecting all stakeholders, it needs more than just structures. It requires this deliberate cultivation of responsibility and accountability inside the organization, not just box ticking.
So this is where that inside-out idea really becomes central. It's not just have the right committees or reporting structures, though they matter.
They provide the scaffolding.
Yeah, but it's about building a culture, a kind of shared mindset, where everyone, no matter their level, thinks about the economic, social, ethical impacts of what they do.
It absolutely starts with the board setting the right tone from the top. That's crucial. But that tone can't just be stated. It has to be actively woven into the fabric of the organization's culture, lived out.
How does that happen in practice?
Well, it can involve things like formal codes of ethics, sure, but also explicitly connecting company values to how people are reviewed, promoted, rewarded,
right,
and fostering a sense of shared purpose that actually means something to employees.
What I found fascinating was the source arguing that things you might think are separate issues like fair hiring practices, good employee welfare, environmental policies, how you treat suppliers and customers.
Yeah.
They are just nice things to do. They're actually presented as tools of good governance.
That's such a key insight from the material, isn't it? And why? Because these practices help create an overall quality culture, an environment where people feel valued, respected, and are actually encouraged to think about the wider impact of the business. And that kind of internal climate inherently makes the negative stuff, the things governance tries to prevent, less likely to happen.
So good governance, from this inside-out view, it's much broader than just the external reports and the audit.
Much broader.
It pulls in internal controls, how performance is managed, budgeting, employee training, even compensation and recognition. It's embedding principles into the daily operations, the company's DNA.
Yes, a business that genuinely embraces the principles behind governance, not just the letter of the law for compliance.
Right.
That business is just far better placed to protect everyone's interests, all stakeholders over the long haul. It's presented as a real contrast to that older, narrower view focused only on maximizing shareholder value.
And this internal focus on culture and ethics, it's not just abstract theory. The source argues it's what actively reduces the risk of bad behavior waste, inefficiency, crazy risk-taking driven by greed, or outright fraud.
Exactly. Actions that ultimately hurt everyone connected to the company. At the end of the day, achieving that balance, really meeting the needs of shareholders, employees, customers, suppliers, the public, and seeing those interests as compatible long-term.
Yeah.
That's only truly possible if accepting corporate social responsibility and thinking ethically becomes baked into the mindset of everyone in the organization.
And that mindset, that internal shift, that's what really drives accountability and responsibility. It works from the inside out.
You've got it.
So I guess the core takeaway from all this source material is pretty clear. Corporate governance isn't just a stack of external rules or compliance checklists.
Definitely not.
It's fundamentally about nurturing a specific kind of a mindset, a culture of responsibility, accountability, and ethical conduct embedded deep within the company at every level.
Couldn't have put it better. And understanding that internal piece, it really does shift how you look at corporate accountability, isn't it?
Yeah, it does.
It moves the focus from just, did they follow Rule X, to what values and what culture are actually driving the decisions being made every single day.
Right.
Which leads us to a final thought, perhaps something for you to mull over. If embedding this pro-stakeholder culture, developing this ethical mindset, is truly the most crucial factor for effective governance, as this material strongly suggests,
Okay.
then what is the ultimate power, or maybe what's the ultimate limitation of relying solely on external laws and regulations to genuinely protect stakeholder interests and stop future corporate disasters?